Welcome to the Cine-Siblings podcast, Movie Draft, the podcast where two brothers and sometimes a guest choose a genre within films and draft the movies fantasy football style. I'm Ian.
And I'm James.
And James, we have a guest here today. I'm going to let you introduce him.
All right. Today we have Jay from Broadsword Academy, Manitoba. He's the head instructor there. Say hi, Jay.
Hey, everybody. Nice to see you all.
All right. Jay, where you from? Do you have anything going on?
So I'm from Winnipeg, Canada.
Awesome.
And things are going pretty good here. Our numbers are going up for COVID, unfortunately. So we're currently in lockdown for past couple of weeks, but hoping to get off of that as the cases start to lower a little bit. So I haven't been up to a whole much of other than work. No practice for me for fencing.
Nice. This is truly probably one of the more special guests we've had so far. And James, what are we drafting today?
Well, we are drafting the great sword fights in cinema. So I think we're going to get some unique perspective from Jay, actually being a practitioner. I know him through the sword fighting community or the HEMA community. That's historical European martial arts. So this is really an exciting one for me. And
yeah, I'm ready for the epicness that is about to ensue talking about all these awesome sword fights. And normally we kind of ban something from it or ban animation, or we're not doing anything. Lightsabers are fair game, but at least one of the instruments needs to be a sword, correct?
Yep, that's the idea. I guess the things that wouldn't count would be somebody doing slaughter with a sword and no fighting back or something like that, but which shows up in cinema from time to time. But I think we're gonna have some fun with it.
Yes, sir. All right, and as always, well, not as always, but a lot of times we play a little game to see who goes first. And we're gonna draw from the deck of actors, and we're gonna
actors categories. Who we got?
That's Joaquin Phoenix.
All right, Jay, you wanna lead us off?
So I just start by saying a movie that he's been in. Is that right?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay, so walk the line.
The Village.
Joker.
Okay, let me think here. Do I get a second? You guys said the ones that I was thinking of. Okay.
5, 4, 3.
I'm drawing a blank. I know a bunch of his other ones, but I'm under pressure. Okay. There we go.
Signs.
I was about to say that one. Gladiator.
Well, I'm gonna you out because I don't know. I can't think of one. I fall under the pressure too. It's not abnormal.
I got a bunch in the chamber. So
yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna go first, and
we're doing the snake draft style too.
Yeah. So it's gonna be me, then Jamie, then Jay, and then Jay, then Jamie, then Ian.
Right.
And then Ian. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. All right.
All right. So round one.
Yeah. Round one. Pick one. First overall. I'm taking Yushu Lien versus Jen Yu, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. This is Michelle Yeoh versus Zhang Ziyi, and the director Ang Lee, 2000. This movie is incredibly gorgeous throughout. It is a very kind of like fantastical sort of sword fight, right?
Sure.
Of these two friends. I mean, this thing has everything. These two women are battling over Jen Yu. She steals the Green Destiny sword, the Green Destiny sword. I mean, so it's got an iconic weapon in it, and as they fight, the Green Destiny sword literally chops through every single weapon that Yushu Lian brings at her, and eventually, it's almost a draw, I think, because Yushu gets the broken sword to her throat, but she does break the sword, and it's kind of like in my opinion, it's a draw.
Okay.
You guys seen this?
Go ahead, Jay.
That was also on my list for sure. I love that fight scene specifically, just because they go through such a beautiful array of all the different weapons that were used. I think there's even hook swords. There's two-handed sword. Some sort of metal type of staff. I really love this because one of my first training partners that I had was a master of 7-star praying mantis kung fu, and he used to have all these crazy weapons. One of the funniest ones that he ever used was called what was it called, a pumpkin monk staff or something, and it has like this cage on the top of it for trapping weapons. And he was also one of like a rare practitioner who was really good at 3-sectional staff, and he had won a lot of tournaments using 3-sectional staff. So he did some broadsword versus 3-sectional staff. And one time we got to perform in front of, I think they were the Beijing acrobats is what they're called, really famous touring acrobats that go throughout the world. And they came by to the Chinese Cultural Center here in Winnipeg when we were training. And they just asked us, hey, what are you guys doing? Because we were sparring with weapons. And because they don't really, I don't think they see a ton of weapon sparring in China as much as forms. So they're kind of curious as to what we were doing, kind of crossing over two styles. And they watched us and had some fun. But so I find those Chinese weapons super endearing. They bring back a lot of memories for me. And also that was one of the big influences on me for getting into swordsmanship, was a lot of those like really action-packed Chinese kung fu movies, because they're just so beautiful. Like they've taken it to a whole other level of doing the art for like display, for demonstrations, for film. And it just looks so great on film because you can see it has like a real martial arts basis, but it's just so flashy, entertaining, and it tells a beautiful story.
Yeah. And one thing I can want to talk about in this scene in particular, the bending of the weapons in this whole fight is like almost like a unique thing in these kung fu movies. You'll see it in another movie I might talk about later, but a lot of them, like the weapons are always so stiff, and just like the bending was always something that like adds to the flair, I think.
I believe like a lot of real swords had, well, you have to have some flexibility with them, but a lot of stage combat weapons, they need a little bit more durability. And so they're either made, to be very stiff and sometimes heavy, or they're made to be very light, like say out of aluminum, but also still not so much flexible. So that's kind of, I think, one reason that you may not actually see that. I think one of the things that we probably do see is sometimes a lot of attention is not paid to the actual stage weaponry used. So people who are kind of in the know kind of go, not quite right. But in this case, I think we have a beautiful array of weapons.
And these actresses, I believe this is them 100% of the way through. I think they're both very talented at what they're doing here as well. And credit to Ang Lee and the choreographer, because this is, it's my number one pick. It's obviously one of the best. And I think they tone down in this scene. They do a little bit. They tone down a lot of the line work, because right after this, they're literally flying through a jungle almost. But they toned it down for this scene, and it's a little more grounded than the rest of the film.
Cool. All right,
Jamie, it is your pick one now.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking it was Jay's turn. All right. My number one pick. I am going to go with probably predictable for me, but from the film Rob Roy, it's going to be Rob Roy versus Archie Cunningham.
I knew this was going to happen.
All right. So it's just one of my all-time favorite sword fights, period, obviously. And it's Scottish. It's broadsword versus, is it a small sword or a rapier?
It's a transitional rapier. I probably would have put a small sword in there, but it is what it is. It's a sword, right? And he kind of uses it almost like a spadroon, like he's cutting a lot with it too.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a not really a mismatch of weapons, but you get two different styles of sword there. And it's not, completely historically accurate, but it's not a bad depiction of one-handed swords, which is something that you see in reviewing for the podcast. I would see people using sabers with two hands and they kind of grab it. And I'm just like, why would you do that? And so I think it's a beautiful fight. There's no score behind it. It's incredibly tense. It continues to build up the tension, and you want this villain to die. Tim Roth plays an excellent villain. And then the finish is kind of unexpected, except it grabs the blade, which you can do without cutting yourself. I've seen I think it was the Phoenix Historical Society. They did, okay, look, we're testing this out so you don't have to, and they kind of showed that as long as your hand doesn't slide up and down, you should be okay.
You know what's a good test of that, believe it or not, is when you're washing knives in the sink, you don't cut yourself. It's because you grab it in a firm way on the flat, right? And even if the edge is against you, as long as it's not moving, that won't happen, right? So it's the same thing with swords. And in his case, he did get a little cut, but I'll let you continue with it.
No, it's good. That's what we do. And it's just, the Tim Roth's character should have let go of the sword once his had been grabbed, but he doesn't, and we're glad that he doesn't. It's got a glorious ending, and he gets the comeuppance that he so richly deserves. But that is my number one pick: Rob Roy versus Archie Cunningham.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, that was a beautiful pick.
I knew you were going to pick this. I knew it 100%. Liam Neeson is a master, obviously. And I think later after this is after Braveheart, isn't it? I think it is.
Yeah, it's like 2 years after. This is 1997. Braveheart's 1995.
And then 2 years later, he gets cast in Star Wars to be a Jedi. So, all right. Jay, you got anything to add?
I heard that during Star Wars, he was a much better fencer than a lot of the other people on there. So supposedly he played some tricks on them by beating them up a little bit, practicing. But Liam Neeson. Okay, so I'm excited about this one too. Obviously, it's on my list too as a broadsword fencer. And yeah, you're right. Not exactly historically how they were used, but pretty darn good. I don't usually look for historical accuracy in movies. I really just look for, what looks good on TV, what tells the story, what I believe for the characters. And it hit all of those points perfectly, right? And there are a bunch of things that I liked about it. Like Liam Neeson, he has such a powerful physical presence in it. You can just see how huge he is, how tall he is, how powerful. And he actually moves super gracefully for somebody that's that tall. If you take a look at, say, boxers, and you compare shadow boxing for somebody that weighs 200 pounds and is 6'4" versus somebody who's 5'5" and quite light, you see that the smaller fighter always moves in a much more graceful, quick way. But Liam Neeson moves pretty darn good for such a huge guy, and I found that really impressive. I love that. And absolutely, it was a cool mix-up of different weapons. It showed two different styles of fencing. Probably historically, Rob Roy would have been maybe more familiar with thrust fencing, as was shown, because that was typically what people trained first with small sword. Though not always. There are some examples that say that the Highlanders stuck to cut fencing mostly, and they would usually fight to the first blood. And there's some really cool examples of some Lowlanders who would fight against Highlanders with broadswords, but the lowlanders would just use a cudgel with their bonnet wrapped around their head and soaked. So they're pretty badass too, going up against somebody with a sharp sword with just a stick, and you know, they would fight against them. But and I think that was from the actual book of Rob Roy that they talk about that.
Nice.
But yeah, really, really great. That's one of my all-time favorites too. I just think it's so satisfying when a bad guy gets killed in that one. He's such an evil guy.
Yeah.
It's so satisfying. And just like they do it justice. They do it, you know, some of the characters justice, some of the beauty of it, the suffering of it too. And I think it's a beautiful film.
Cool. All right, Jay.
Yeah. Jay, it's your first round pick.
Okay. So maybe I will go with my number one, which I'm glad wasn't said yet. Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, when Aragorn fights against Lurtz.
Nice.
That's one of my favorite.
We were just talking about Lord of the Rings and how I couldn't find one in Lord of the Rings. But this
Like a one-on-one fight, kind of.
Yeah. I couldn't think of it one.
Yeah, this was my favorite. So the reason that I love it is it starts off as a battle scene. It's at the end, kind of near the fall of Boromir, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, Legolas, Gimli, Aragorn are just kicking butt out there. You know, I've never seen a fight scene like that quite before. Legolas was amazing, but the part where Aragorn is defending Boromir as he gets shot by the Uruk-hai Lurtz, it's just amazing to me. I love when Lurtz throws the shield at Aragorn and gets his head caught in the tree. I was like, oh man. And just how brutal Lurtz is. And then you just see when Aragorn finally gets in and close with his two-handed sword, he's just so amazingly fast. And you see like, wow, this guy's he's really a skilled swordsman, and he's using like this beautiful weapon that's perfectly, you know, counterbalanced in a way that moves around really quickly. Whereas Lurtz has a heavy chopping machete and can't quite keep up. And it just shows like, I don't know, it just showed the power and skill of Aragorn in such an amazing way. And when he gets stabbed, he pulls in the sword inside of his gut, you know, yells at him, and then Aragorn pulls it out, cuts off the head. Literally, we went on opening night. I went with my dad and a couple of school friends. I think I would have been like 12 or 13 years old at the time. And the entire audience just like cheered and was shouting at that moment. It was just, and I think that's why it stuck with me, maybe even more than the choreography, but actually the choreography too is like really, really well done. And obviously it's done by Bob Anderson, who is an Olympian and beautiful fight choreographer. And I think a lot of the stuff that we do from, you know, a lot of the movies we pick might have actually been some of his work, as we discussed later on. Interesting little fact though is he was my coach's coach growing up.
Nice.
Bob Anderson. My coach came from England, and his first coach was Bob Anderson. And then later Bob Anderson moved to Canada, and he became the president of the Canadian Fencing Association here too. But it was kind of interesting. So I always like to say to myself, you know, my coach's coach, technically I'm learning the lineage of Aragorn and Darth Vader.
Nice.
I mean, doesn't get better than that, right?
Wait, didn't Bob Anderson, didn't he do work with Errol Flynn too?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get more classic than that. And one of the points you brought up about this fight, and you know, I kind of wasn't, I went, well, there's some duels in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and you kind of skip over the Fellowship of the Ring sometimes in your mind, and you kind of like, oh, well, the end is just, you think Aragorn, you know, and Boromir at the death scene, but I wasn't thinking about how fast he uses the two-handed sword, which our Broadsword Club shares space with a German, well, it's mostly German longsword. They do some other stuff too, but one of the things you learn pretty quickly is that, you know, if you think that these two-handed swords are slow, you're absolutely wrong. And in a lot of ways, they're faster than a lot of single-handed swords, unless they're, you know, really light like the small sword or something. But yeah, I didn't actually think about that, and that's a really good aspect of this fight, and that it is very fast-paced, and I think Viggo Mortensen really did put a lot of work into
he did.
learning swordsmanship, and he came in late. Like, he came in during production, not pre-production. So, you know, that speaks to him as an actor and wanting to get it right. And he wouldn't use, I've watched all the, you know, like the making of
Right.
stuff ad nauseum, but he wouldn't use those, the aluminum swords. He used his real steel weighted sword. So.
And you talk about the shield getting thrown.
Mm.
My favorite is when Aragorn throws the knife and Lars is just like, "Get this out of here!" And it does happen so quickly that you're like, "Oh, whoa, what's going on?"
It took me multiple.
Yeah, he just limps a little bit and then pulls it out of his leg. Yeah. It's pretty.
And that too.
Yeah.
Oh,
Anyway,
that's good.
that's awesome. I'm glad Lord of the Rings made it because I was like searching for something to take. I almost settled on like was going to take the Aragorn versus the Ring Wraiths on Weathertop, but it was kind of like it's kind of
more. There's more torch than sword.
more. Yeah, for sure. But it is time for round 2, and Jay, you're going to kick off round 2.
Okay, so this is one of my other all-time favorite ones is from the movie Hero, when they're in the chess court, and it's Hero versus, I think his name is Sky. And so there's one guy using the spear, right? And did I steal yours, Ian?
Yeah, it's on the list.
I'm sorry. I'm so glad you didn't say it before.
Right, Nameless versus Sky. So it's go ahead.
Nameless, right? That's his name.
Jet Li is Nameless, and then Sky is
and Donnie Yen.
Donnie Yen. I was like, you can't get better than this, dude. Two masters.
No. So I mean, the first thing that's so beautiful about that fight scene, obviously, is the instrument that they're playing, and that's like an authentic. They call it. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but I spoke to somebody who has a doctorate in Chinese music history. You know, where do you meet these people? That's such a random thing to
right.
Get a PhD in, but she was just like beautifully intelligent about it. And I think it's called the Gu Qin, and it's a really ancient instrument, and it's fretless, right? So you get a lot of really interesting sound. It's fairly quiet, but really meditative music, and a lot of the oldest Chinese music is written on some of the older Chinese music is written on that instrument. So it's really beautiful. The other thing is, you know, the raindrops play a part in it. And really the main fight isn't really a fight. It's just them visualizing what would happen.
In their head. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's really one of my all-time favorites. The music for it is just outstanding. Jet Li and Donnie Yen are like the two top guys you could pick for Chinese martial arts to do a fight scene together. Just gorgeous. And you can see like what a high level of skill these guys have, both as actors and as stuntsmen, you know, absolutely stunning. And it tells such a beautiful story. You know, you don't want either one of them to get hurt because they're just like amazing people. And it's such a tragedy when Sky or Donnie Yen does get, you know, killed. I guess we're allowed spoilers because we're talking.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Jamie spoiled the end of Rob Roy, so
it's been out for long enough.
But this happens at the beginning of the film too. Yeah. And I had a feeling that it was going to get taken either by me or by you. So I was texting Jamie earlier, and I was like, just go watch the first 20 minutes of Hero if you haven't seen it. It's on HBO Max.
It's just been a while since I've seen it. That was you know, it was a great film.
This movie as a whole, I'm gonna just break off into a tangent, and I watched it today. Literally watched it after work today. Before this, it is one of the most gorgeously filmed movies of all time. The cinematography on this movie is incredible. The story is incredible. Jet Li is incredible. All that. I mean, I can't really tell if like the acting is so good because it's not my language. So I'm not like, to me, it sounds good. Like everything sounds on point. But this fight scene, like you said, it happens in their minds. It's them visualizing, and the music, like you said, it is organic to the scene. You know, I love how they're like, we want you to play one more song. And then in their mind, while this music's going in their mind, they're kind of visualizing this battle. And then when the strings break on that instrument, then they clash. And it is kind of, the effects are kind of a little dated a little bit. The very end with the raindrops swirling around, and you're like, okay, but it's still gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's still, it's definitely still one from me.
Well, it does also play into the whole idea of sword fighting, particularly duels, are particularly psychological in nature.
Oh yeah.
So, and that's an aspect that's sometimes lost. And it's one of those things of, you can show it in facial expressions, but part of the problem is that sword fights also happen so quickly that it's hard to do that. And you're worried about choreography, and you're worried about not hurting, the actors are actually worried about not like hurting people too, because there's the propensity for that as well. So, I like that psychological aspect is played out in this.
Also, Donnie Yen, before Jet Li comes into the scene, Donnie Yen has his spear, and he's fighting like 5 or 6 other guys with the leather spear cover still on. And we were talking about bendy swords. This dude literally just bashing these dudes' swords in, and they're all like bent, and they were just like, we yield. I thought
I think
it's
they
a nice
were
bit of comedy.
representing, some of them, I think, might have been representing bronze swords, because it was set in the Qin dynasty, right? And a lot of the swords that were left over from that were bronze.
Well, that's something that you don't actually see, and probably could play on some of that. It's one of those things of, there seems to be more attention to weapon detail there. So I don't know if that's something that the maybe it's because there's more of a continued history of martial arts in the Far East. I don't know,
but I could talk about this movie for hours. So Jamie, it's your it's your second round pick.
All right. Okay. I have a lot to pick from, and I'm gonna go with Ridley Scott's breakout film, The Duelists. And there's a bunch of duels to pick in here. So the one I'm gonna pick is actually one of the perhaps less remarkable ones. It's the second duel. It's a duel with small swords, which, for those of you uninitiated, or rather, well, Jay, would you explain the small sword a little bit for those, because we've talked about them numerous times already?
Yeah, so a small sword is kind of like the sword that the rapier became. So if you picture like a musketeer sword, something that you see then, kind of a thrust pointy sword, that with a nice thin narrow blade. The small sword is kind of the form that it took somewhere in the 1700s, around then. And typically they have a triangular shaped blade. So what's really interesting about them is if you take the cross section, so if you cut it in half like this and you're looking at the blade, it would be shaped like a triangle, but with a dip in it, a bit of a fuller. So it's a hollow ground blade, so it makes it super stiff but super light. So it's a real engineering feat, because those blades are really good for penetrating through thick clothing, whatever, without a ton of force on them, because they're such a stiff, strong blade, and super light. Like a lot of them weigh as much as some modern sport fencing weapons, right? And I think an épée is around 700 grams or so. That would be on the heavy end. Some of them are actually quite light, around 400, 500 grams. So really light weapons, and specifically usually made just for thrusting. Some of them do have a bit of an edge on them, and there are different blade shapes, like the triangular one isn't the only one. But they're really elegant, again, but it's mostly thrust fencing.
Right.
Stabbing, poking.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So this is, all right, so Ridley Scott kind of wanted to get away from a lot of the cliche Hollywood stuff. And the small sword fencing in this film, I think, is, as a non-fencer of small swords, is really good. It looks like things I've seen actual practitioners do. And the other thing, this particular duel, it's one guy and he's got like it looks like an oven mitt, but it allows you to kind of parry with your hand. And it's so realistic because it's so short. I just love how quickly it's over and done with. And it's so realistic as to how much damage a little poke with a blade can do to someone. and he kind of like he picks him up. He stops and he grabs his chest, and he's like, and he walks over to his second and collapses down, and he's not dead. And the guy who does it, he picks up his blade and brings it over to him, and see if he can continue. He can't. I think I watched every duel in this film, and the saber duels are a little bit poor. They're one of the things that does throw me off is the sound effects with the film. The clanging of swords. So I guess it's Foley art. Stop it. Stop making swords sound like bars of iron that are hitting each other. It drives me crazy. It's like they just don't sound like that. But I just like it because it's like all the setup, they're standing there and they take their guards, and then he's like, wait, and he has to sneeze, and he does like, okay, he tucks his handkerchief back in his belt, and then they take a guard again. And it's like, I've seen that happen in fencing bouts. It's like, nope, wait, okay, and it really kind of shows the formality of the duel. And it's not just something that's done in the heat of the moment. And so I really like that about the film.
Yeah, such an
I've
interesting.
never seen it.
What?
I'm going to add it to my watch list. There you go.
Right on. It's such
really
an interesting thing to think about, though, is preparation for a duel. A lot of the time, us as fencers, is we're kind of preparing to fight everyone, because you don't know who you're going to meet at a tournament. It's an interesting concept to me to fight a duel, because you're preparing defense against one person. So I feel like if I could, I would creep on them. If I could, back then you wouldn't be able to find footage of them training or anything like that, but I would definitely talk to their partners or see if I could come up with some sort of information about what they do, what school they've trained at, under whose master, what are they likely to do, what are they good at, and how to really counter it. What are they defeated by? But that's my strategic brain going, thinking about what I would do in those situations. Of course, as a person, I probably wouldn't be getting into many duels because I'm pretty agreeable and I don't take insults too personally. We get a lot of them online, being a YouTuber, right?
Sure.
So you can't take them personally, but really, really good film. Again, the saber fight was maybe a little disappointing because they're acting like they're way too heavy than they actually would be. But the small sword was really beautiful, and even just like the other than the sound effects of the swords, just like even the sound and kind of like the vibe after somebody gets injured in the film seems really interesting. It's different than like the dramatic deaths you'll see from a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
And I think the fight that he was in, at least one of them, I believe, was using Hope's hanging guard. Hey.
Yeah.
Sir William Hope. Yeah. Somebody was using a hanging guard.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I was like, "Hey, I know what he's doing."
All right, well, I'm lost, so I'm going to go ahead and I can't believe this has fallen to me. I'm super excited. My number 2 pick is going to be the Dread Pirate Roberts versus Inigo Montoya. I'm going to be that guy from The Princess Bride. This has everything, awesome choreography, swashbuckling feel, comedy. You forget, I'm not left-handed, so...
A plot twist.
Yeah, or a scene twist for sure. And I mean, I talked about The Princess Bride in our family movie draft. I took it, and this is probably one of the most iconic sword duels ever in film. And like I said, I can't believe it fell to me. But I'll let you guys talk about it.
Really?
I think one of the things that I like about it, the historical thing, is he names a bunch of like real historical masters. I think he says Capoferro, Tybalt. I can't remember who else. Maybe somebody, Agrippa, maybe? I think it was Agrippa. So somehow the author of it dug up a bunch of like historical manuals, I think from the book, which is pretty amazing. But also the weapons look really nice. They look really good. And it's so funny and entertaining.
Yeah.
Right.
the switching of hands, I think, is probably the most iconic and going. It's like left-handed. Oh, well, me neither. And then you're like, oh, now the sword fight is really going to start. And it's fun, and that's sometimes I think what movies should be. They just need to have some fun, but there's it's got tension too, and
Right.
just like every good fight should. But I think this is probably it's definitely deserves to be deserves to be drafted for sure.
Oh yeah. Was it on you guys' list at all?
No, but it was because I knew that it would be on one of yours.
Okay.
I was trying to pick ones you wouldn't get.
Fair enough.
I knew it was going to be on his list too, because he was like, "You're going to pick all this weird random stuff," and I'm like,
I'm gonna
"You'll
pick
be
the cliche
fine.
thing.
You'll be fine."
Right. All right.
Round 3.
Are we done talking about the Princess Bride sword fight?
I mean, yeah.
All right, sweet. Let's head into round 3. And it's me again. So, as you can see, I'm quite a Star Wars fan. I'm going Anakin versus Obi-Wan in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. This is the flashiest. This is the best. The stakes have never been higher, except for maybe in Return of the Jedi. But this is the duel to end the prequel trilogy of Star Wars. This is something that has been building up in the Star Wars lore since 1977, when we hear about Anakin Skywalker being a Jedi Knight, Luke's father. And this is just one of the best choreographed. Yes, it gets a little silly here and there, but the ending of it is incredibly emotional. And if you've been invested in these two's friendship throughout the entire Star Wars saga, then it is definitely deserves to be on somebody's list, and it's on mine. So I'll let you guys talk about it.
Yeah, it definitely did it justice, I think. Like it was everything you hoped it would be, and a little bit darker, and some parts you didn't want to see, but it definitely always gives me chills whenever I see it, especially the ending and everything, kind of the tragedy. I think they did a really good job of that. And even the ending of it where he's in the Vader armor, after being so badly wounded,
Right.
I thought that was just really, really well done, how they tied it all together. I wasn't a huge fan of, I think, the Clone War, the one, Attack of the Clones, the one prior to that, episode 2. Wasn't a huge fan of that, but episode 3 I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's aspects of this sword fight or lightsaber duel goes on for quite a while, and I almost wish that they didn't intercut the other scenes between it.
Right.
But I think they may have done that to increase the length that they could allow this to go on. But I kind of just want to watch an edit of it straight through,
Absolutely. But we do get I think it's intercut with Yoda versus the Emperor.
Yeah, it's not like there's
also
an action break or something that keeps
which
the
is
same
also,
intensity.
Which is also a great duel in itself, and it juxtaposes Obi-Wan at the end. This is a meme. Obi-Wan has the high ground, and Anakin thinks he's too good and gets chopped essentially in half. But then Yoda loses the high ground and knows he's beaten and runs away. He flees from the Emperor. He knows he's beaten. And I think that it's intentional. And this whole scene just backed up with John Williams, just like,
yeah,
it just knocks the score out of the park. But yeah.
And I think those are pretty typical cutscenes for Star Wars films. So like,
mm-hmm.
I'm thinking back to episode 1, during the fight with Darth Maul and everything, and there was a lot going on at the same time, so they would kind of cut from action scene to action scene, right? And it all kind of built into a climax.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
All
right,
right,
Jamie, it is your round 3 pick.
Okay. Well, y'all haven't stolen a lot from me, so I'm gonna actually go with The Musketeer. Not a great film, but it's The Final Duel with Tim Roth as Fabre versus Justin Chambers as D'Artagnan.
You would love some Tim Roth villains, man.
I hate him. I love him, but I hate him. Like I remember watching Lie to Me, his show where he's like the lead good guy on Fox. And I'm like, is he going to be a jerk? He's kind of a jerk in this show, so it's got that House vibe. But
right.
I'm like, it took me a long time to warm up to him. But yeah. Anyway, this Final Duel is, I tend to like more realistic sword fights, but this one popped into my head, and I don't love it for the realism. It's not realistic at all. But when rewatching this scene, I was thinking, this is kind of reminiscent of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or a lot of these Hong Kong films. And then I look it up, and I'm like, oh, so Hong Yan is the stunt coordinator for this film, and so it's got that Hong Kong film fight kind of feel to it. And they're, fighting on ladders, on barrels, and tumbling down stairs. And one of the things I was thinking of with the stairs is like it's kind of a nod to all the Errol Flynn fights, the classics where they're fighting up and down these stairs on these sets. And this just takes all those different aspects of using the scenery and the setting or the stage pieces and just amps it up to 11. And it's just fun. It's absolutely fun. So that's my pick for this is the third round, right? Yeah, number 3.
What movie is this? The
Musketeer
from 2001?
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
I remember that
Grey's Anatomy is on this.
I remember like not expecting it to be like Chinese sword fighting and just thinking that was so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just threw me for a loop, I guess, when I first watched it, because I'm going like, oh, it's going to be like, Disney Three Musketeers, like standard, fun, good sword fighting. And I'm like, what is this? And that's kind of, it's a good subversion of expectations.
It's like A Knight's Tale. You love that, right?
Which I didn't love at first. I had to grow to love that one.
Anyway, I don't know that I've ever seen this movie, but I see Justin Chambers as D'Artagnan, and that dude is in Grey's Anatomy.
I did not realize that until I looked him up, and I was like going, I know who that is, because my wife watches Grey's, and I've started watching it with her.
So. Which guy is that from Grey's Anatomy?
It's Alex Karev.
Oh, it's Karev. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I watch Grey's Anatomy with my wife too.
Okay, yeah.
Much younger man.
I literally watched like 5 episodes last night with my wife of the most recent season they put on Netflix, and they're like in the process of writing him out of the show, and I'm like, what are they doing to this dude's character? But anyway, side tangent. All right, so that's your round 3 pick. Jay, it's up to you, man.
Okay, so I'm kind of torn right now about which one I should go with, but you know what? Since you mentioned Errol Flynn and the staircases, I just wanted to bring up Errol Flynn in Robin Hood.
Nice.
There's a really cool scene. I remember, I think I rented it from the library when I was a kid, because I think around the age of like 10 or so, I was really into Robin Hood. And I used to watch that old Rocket Robin Hood. And, for some reason, I really liked them. I had a couple books with him fighting with quarter staves with pictures. And I think that was one of my big interests in kind of older European martial arts, was just in some of these stories. But there's the one scene where he is fighting up some staircases. And what's really cool about it is you can tell that it's really based on modern, or not modern, but really classical saber fencing. So they're doing kind of cut and thrust play. You can see them parry and tierce and second and use some of these nice positions and, parry the head, and there's some nice thrusts. But aside from that, that wasn't super important to me because I didn't really understand it at the time that I was watching it. Errol Flynn is just, his movement is just so good, right? Like when he kicks, when he kicks the table at the guy, or, you know, when he does like a thrust and he really like winds up for it and goes for it, he just moves so fast, right? And it's not sped up in any way. I think he just like, he was a person with really, really beautiful movement, and he clearly spent a lifetime training fencing, training, you know, all the things, riding, everything, right? And it just really shows as like very heroic, nice posture, really balanced movement without being artificial or fake, and still telling the story. And it looks like a fight in earnest, you know? I really love that one.
Is this his duel with Basil Rathbone?
I believe so. I think so. I haven't really seen it much since I was a kid, but it just really stood out to me. And I watched it again recently.
Nice.
So we are talking about The Adventures of Robin Hood from 1938, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah,
Because there's 8 million Robin Hoods. for
the one with Errol Flynn, though.
Yeah. So that's a good one. Yeah, and Basil Rathbone is one of those. He's of that era, golden age villain. You know, he's like your 90s Tim Roth, early 2000s.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this dude's a legend, right? Like everybody, a lot of the modern films. Yeah, I mean, you got some of the Musketeer movies, Pirates of the Caribbean. All these are just pulling from his work in his films, and so definitely has to be here somewhere, right?
Either you're trying to one up Errol Flynn, or you're trying to not be like Errol Flynn. Like,
right?
He's the gold standard of cinema from that, you know, and so ingrained, I think, in the psyche. So, or I guess if we have a cultural psyche, I guess if that's your thought on it, but yeah.
And you can really see the way he moves is different. Like you can tell when a lot of actors, like Pirates of the Caribbean is a good, when it's the actors that are doing it and not stunt people, you can really see a difference between the way that they move and Errol Flynn, right? Like just in the speed, the aggressivity, and like it seems like that guy was like born with a sword in his hand or something. He must have been training from a very young age, or at least to a very high level. Because his movement is just so sharp, and he looks like a swordsman when he does it. Like he looks like he's going to hurt somebody, versus some of the slower choreographed stuff, which is very rhythmic. Yeah, that's one of the things that I found that really stands out to me, is just him being in it.
Nice. All right. It's round 4, huh?
Yeah, let's head into round 4. Jay, you're up again.
Oh, right. Okay. So the next one is Mark of Zorro from 1940.
Oh.
And that is that yours?
You got one from my list.
Okay, that has got to be probably the best fight scene, I think. Maybe the best one for accuracy of, like, they're doing such complex fencing in it. It looks so fast and sharp. They have beautiful stances, and it's a fight with very light dueling sabers. And it's just so beautifully done. Like even their outfits, the boots that one of the guys is wearing, like those horse riding boots that he's wearing, like knee high. His stance is perfect. Like when I watch this, I think those are my fencing goals, to look that sharp and that good, right? And they do lots of complicated blade actions and everything. When they go for a thrust, I think he hits. Does he hit a bookshelf behind him at some point?
Yeah, it's something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah,
I rewatched it. It's
and he just like ducks underneath. It's like awesome. It's so fast and beautiful.
Yeah, it is really fast paced. This is Tyrone Power as Don Diego versus Basil Rathbone as Captain Esteban Pasquale. I just saw it as being like classic Hollywood kind of swordplay, but nothing going too crazy. They do, like at the opening, he does that chop through the candle thing. You know, and
every Zorro movie ever.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they did that with Disney did that also with the Three Musketeers, where you got like Charlie Sheen and Kiefer Sutherland and stuff playing these guys. And I was like going, that's a Disney thing, isn't it? And so it just was one of those things. I'm like going, all right, I'm seeing this go through, and it was just really it's just fun to watch, and isn't is it? I don't know what the style is that they're using, but one of the things that somebody told me, and it wasn't a practitioner of Spanish rapier fencing, but he was talking about it, and it has this idea of there being, it's very like kind of straighter stances and a lot of attitude involved with it, and you kind of see that in this a little bit, not overly much, but there's definitely a lot of fun attitude that goes along with this scene. So, good pick.
Hell yeah. All right, Jamie, let's hear your round 4 pick.
All right. I am going to go, I did a fun one last time. I'm going to go into some realism. And it is actually, to me, it's one of the more realistic sword fights out there. It's like an older style. Stuff's a little bit played up for the film, but this is a fairly new film, 2019's The King. So it's based on Shakespeare's Henry treatments. So it's Timothy Chalamet, I think that's how I pronounce it, as Prince Hal or Henry V, and Tom Glencarney as Henry Hotspur Percy.
You stole one from me.
I got one from you?
I've been telling you to watch this movie, so I'm glad you watched it.
Good. So without too many, I'm not going to do a lot of spoilers on the film, since it's actually fairly new and still, widely available for streaming, but it's a really good depiction of an armored fight between knights on foot. These two men are in full plate armor. They go at it with swords. They're going for some thrusts at, the weak points in the armor, and the armor actually protects them when they're struck. I mean, they get their bell rung a little bit here and there, but like, one of my pet peeves now watching film is like, well, why are they wearing armor at all if it's going to be cut through like butter?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's made out of the same thing as the sword is made.
Right.
Emily asked me that when we were watching The Mandalorian the other day. She was like, why do the stormtroopers even wear armor? They get killed. Like, I was like, well, bulletproof vests don't like stop. I mean, they stop a bullet, but you still could get knocked unconscious. But yeah, armor in this is super realistic. And this whole fight is super visceral.
Yeah.
I remember.
I mean, they ultimately just wrestled to the ground, and the fights actually ended properly with a dagger.
Right. In a weak point.
Right. In the armpit, I believe. Like, that's if you were going to actually kill the person and not take them for hostage for ransom, then that's what you were going to do. And the swords are a little wrong. I've watched some videos talking about the shape of the blade, and that's, I think, just an inattention to detail. But they generally fight with them as though they were more proper blades. But yeah, I agree. Ian, go ahead. You were talking about how visceral the fight was.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these fights in movies, it's like they have infinite stamina. And in this one, they're like rolling on the ground, like gasping for air, and just almost in the mud, in the muck. Just everybody's watching this duel happen. And man, just like I said, the visceral nature of it, I've never seen something seem so real before in a film, and this one definitely captured some sort of realism for me. Have you seen this movie, Jay?
No, that's why I'm totally silent on it.
It
Sounds like I need to watch it, though.
Yeah, this movie is pretty good. Yeah. It surprised me because a lot of the Netflix movies, you're like, whatever, it'll be all right. I mean, it's basically free, right? And then this one, I was very surprised at how good it was.
It's a real ensemble cast, though. It's one of the things I'm kind of.
Yeah, no, well, Netflix has been killing it, man, for sure.
They're in a lot of debt, but okay.
Well, they're making good movies, so.
Yeah, enjoy them while you can.
Hell yeah. All right, so it's back to me?
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to be that guy again. And I'm taking The Bride versus the Crazy 88 Kill Bill Volume 1. This scene is wacky, crazy, unrealistic, totally nonsense, but it works on so many levels. She doesn't actually fight 88 people, but she fights something like 44 people. And a lot of Tarantino films are violent, obviously. Ultra violence is kind of the theme here, but he had never done something so large. I don't think he'd ever done a scene this large, this choreographed and this planned out before, with this many people. Obviously, earlier in the movie, there's awesome fight scenes, but this one is just crazy. And the ultra violence of the whole thing kind of just adds to it. I mean, she's snatching people's eyeballs out in the middle of this whole thing. And I think she's referred to as the deadliest woman alive or something. And this scene definitely proves that. But, and there's some little like mini boss fights throughout the whole thing. She's running across tightrope running. This scene is definitely awesome in every sense of the word.
Fair enough. What
y'all think?
I totally agree. It's a wicked scene. Those are really good movies. I really like that one. I think about like some quotes from it and everything. One of my favorites was when the sword maker is making the sword, and he says, if you should encounter God will be cut by the sword. And you're just like, whoa, that's a pretty deadly sword, right?
Hattori Hanzo, yeah.
Yeah, Hattori Hanzo. And then in that fight scene, she really proves it, eh? Like, whoa, you see like the awesome power of her and the sword. And it's cool that, she's doing it. Like she looked so good in that movie. She looked really, really good doing that. Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that I talked about earlier in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, is the iconic weapon, the iconic sword, and the Hattori Hanzo sword is the iconic weapon in this movie. And I love this scene. I do like this movie a lot. I think I like the first one more than the second one, but whatever. It's one story. So, yeah. Jamie, what do you think?
No, I mean, it's been a while since I've seen this particular one. It's not my favorite, but that's why I didn't draft it. It's not bad.
I mean, it's the blood squirting out everywhere.
It's certainly, pretty memorable. Great, like, I can see it in my head, like, and you talk about the blood squirting everywhere. It's like, it's classic, and it's a good pick.
All right. Well, you took my number 5 pick with the Prince Hal versus Percy Hotspur. So let's head into round 5. And it's my pick again. And I'm going to need a second, guys, because there's a bunch that I could choose from. But I don't want to take another Star Wars. I'm not going to use Star Wars as a crutch. So let's go with Hector versus Achilles in Troy.
You stole one.
Got it. Hector versus Achilles in Troy. Brad Pitt just chews the scenery up in this movie. And the movie as a whole is kind of like, it's not the the Iliad or the Odyssey or whatever, but
it is the Iliad though,
right? But it's not it's not a true.
No, it's more of a more grounded, down to earth reimagining of it.
Right. It's not like they adapted it, but it was like loosely based on the story of the Iliad. Anyway, so Hector versus Achilles, Brad Pitt versus Eric Bana. What happened to that guy?
I like
well,
them.
he got killed by by Brad Pitt in this movie, and
This one, there's no spoiler warning here.
no, absolutely not.
It doesn't get more iconic weapons duel between it than Achilles versus Hector.
All right, so this scene starts off versus like it starts off. They're fighting with spears,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't see a lot of that in films, and I thought that was super unique. And that's the spears are broken, the shields are like Brad Pitt has that shield with the cutout in it, Achilles, and he's like poking through it and using it. That was always always memorable for me. And this movie as a whole is kind of not memorable, but the scene is definitely memorable.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that stuck out to me with this scene is it's a sword fight, although it does start with spears, which I appreciated, because one thing people forget is they think of swords as always having been the primary weapon, and it really isn't. The spear was the primary weapon of the soldier.
Especially in this time period.
Oh yeah, well the age of the phalanx, yeah, there's no question. But the other thing about this that I really love is they use their freaking shields.
Oh yeah,
they use the shields. They don't call it sword and shield like that's a term that the hand in hand for a reason, because and I think you brought it up earlier, Jay, with I think it was the Hero, when we talked about Hero, those swords being made of bronze. These swords would have been made of bronze, and you can't keep bronze sharp for very, very long, and it gets beat up, and you can't sit there and parry metal on metal with these things. They're your sidearm. These are short. You have some really fun choreography with it in the film. I guess I would have liked to see the damage to the bronze swords to kind of go, yeah, this is why they don't make these any bigger than they are. But yeah, I mean it's definitely a fun little duel.
Brad Pitt loves to jump, and
there was some research done on Bronze Age weapons. Robert Brooks from Hotspur School of Defense. He worked with a doctor I forget at which university, but they tested to see what kind of damage would be produced on replicas of, what's that guy's name? I can't think of his name right now. He makes really beautiful copies of Bronze Age weapons, replicas of them. Perfectly accurate. They're just amazing. I can't think of his name right now. I've read about him a lot and seen his stuff. But they used his weapons in it, and they showed that a lot of the patterns that we see on surviving examples of bronze pieces are from the edge-on-edge contact, like Robert Brooks did, where he does a lot more like early medieval German stuff where they do binds and stuff like that on the blades. So some of the battle damage showed that they were using a lot of edge-on-edge contact, like they did later in the medieval, which is something kind of interesting because, again, like bronze being, not quite as strong as steel, a lot of times we don't think that they were used. But yeah, there's examples in the Iliad of people bending their swords back into shape after battle. That's written about it, but they were pretty resilient. They were pretty resilient tools. And I really liked that during the scene, a lot of times they looked like some of those ancient Greek warriors that are on vases and some of the poses that they were in, right? Like it really looked like if you took a snapshot of it, it might be something similar to the way we see that like athletic display with these guys with massive thighs, bare thighs on the vases, just these manly beasts, right? In ancient Greece. And they say that, supposedly their hormone but testosterone levels were way, way higher than ours are today. So that may be a very good representation of what they actually looked like. Yeah, I really loved it. I love that they used the spear. I love that they used the shield, that he was turning the spear around. They ended up getting damaged and broken. Really cool scene. Is it 100% accurate? Probably not. Like it's really super flashy, but then again, like I don't care. It was awesome.
Yeah. Right. But I don't think this can be accurate. Like Achilles is sort of this half god man, right? Yeah. Like Hercules in so many ways. But yeah, that's my number.
It should be fantastical, it should be amazing.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And the use of the shields is very creative in this scene as well. But that's my number 5 pick, and let's take a brief intermission because my wife just got home and my dogs are going to go crazy.
Okay, pause. All right, so my number 5 pick is going to be, I'm going to do it, Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
The Black Knight.
Graham Chapman as King Arthur versus John Cleese as the Black Knight. It's a absolutely horrible sword fight, but it's great cult comedy. It's one of the most classic Monty Python film bits of all time, and it deserves a mention. So I am going for it. I remember seeing it as a kid. I remember probably watching this film long before we should have as kids.
We didn't understand half of the jokes.
It doesn't matter. I mean, like just the casual nudity in Monty Python films that I was going like, oh, what the? But this is just so good. It's just so fun. So
it is classically hilarious. I mean, so many quotes from this alone. What are you going to do? Bleed on me?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm surprised. Like I didn't even think of it. Not even on my radar.
I didn't think of it either, but I've seen it so many times.
Yeah.
I think Mom mentioned. No, I mentioned that one to Mom, and she actually has a drawing that you didn't finish of like a knight or something, Ian.
Oh,
and she's
great.
she's like, oh, this is like the Black Knight. And she said she's gonna scan it and send it to you.
Oh my God, hilarious.
All right.
Okay, so I think this might be, oh no, I guess I get 2 right now, or maybe
Nope.
my last one.
This is your last.
This is your last pick.
Oh, my last one, okay.
Yeah.
So my last one is Yojimbo, The Bodyguard, old black and white movie. Really, really, really good. It was by the same director. I'm forgetting his name, and I shouldn't forget his name because it's
Akira
so important.
Kurosawa.
Kurosawa, that's what it was, Kurosawa. I was getting it mixed up because we just said Hattori Hanzo from. I'm really bad with Japanese names, but Kurosawa directed it, and there's this fight scene at the end where the bodyguard finally confronts all these bullies that have been ruining the town, I recently saw a picture of like the Mandalorian pays homage to this scene. Where it's exactly like in the last episode that just happened. Anyway, like they have shot for shot identical moments as this fight.
We were actually in a conversation on Twitter about this. The Mandalorian with the Kurosawa, which I mean, George Lucas's biggest inspiration for Star Wars was Akira Kurosawa. I mean, the Star Wars in itself is a retelling of one of his films. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was an awesome fight scene because one of the leaders has like a pistol. It looks like a 6-shooter. And as soon as he draws it to fire, the swordsman who's taken everybody on like dodges off to the side, it misses, and then he just slaughters everybody. Everybody has swords. He ends up letting one guy go because the guy cries out, "Mommy," and he gets terrified. And it's kind of a shocking moment. It's funny at first when you think about it, and then it's just so tragic, right? Because I think of a lot, myself as a mental health therapist, I work a lot with gang members, and so many of these kids kind of get wrapped up into it. Because that's their life. Those are the cards that they've been dealt in life, right? And they're pressured into it by society pressures, by friends, by family, to join that life. And he spares them, and he says that children shouldn't. And he's a adult, but he says children shouldn't play with swords, right? So the guy I think he drops his sword and runs off.
Well, he says, "Go home to your mother."
That's what he says.
He says children shouldn't play with swords. He drops the sword. He says, "Go home to your mother."
Right. Yeah, that was so good. And I just thought that was so powerful how he just let him go like that. Yeah. And then even his opponent, as he's laying on the ground, he asks, like, he wants his gun back. And he said, I fired 2 shots. There's nothing in there. And of course, he's tricking him to try to shoot him, right? but he ends up bleeding out first. And it's really shocking because like you can just see the blood pooling out on the ground, and it's a black and white film, but it still doesn't take away from the power of the moment as this guy's bleeding out. Like it's just such a beautiful, disturbing film, like really visionary. I don't know. I loved it, and it looked really good. The swordsmanship looked like historical. It looked accurate. It was awesome and clear. Like they made it clean enough so that you could follow everything that was going on.
Akira Kurosawa is a master of his craft, and this scene, I mean, the cinematography is incredible, and this isn't that sort of super jump cutty sort of action you would get in like some of the prequel Star Wars stuff or some of the like the Bourne movies. It's like this really quick jump cutty action that you get lost trying to follow it, but it's this clean, like you said, it's this clean, smooth, and he just one cut. He's just mowing these dudes down, and man, it reminds you of sort of anime where these people are just going like jumping, like just gliding across, slicing people as they go. And yeah, this I mean, Kurosawa is one of the best filmmakers of all time, and this is one of his best movies too. So
yeah.
All right. So
and
it's
Toshiro Mifune is the actor in this.
That's yeah. I know that stuff, but I mostly just read it as subtitles, and I've never said it out loud before.
Right. So
I have one other friend who watches these with me.
Mifune is, or Mifune.
It's Mifune.
Is, yeah. He is in most of Kurosawa's films, and I think I believe they had a falling out later, but I think in his older years he came back and did another movie with him. But yeah, an incredible pick, incredible movie.
All right. I think it's time for the recap now.
Yes.
Ian, lead us off.
All right. My first pick is Yushu Lien versus Jen Yu in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. My number 2 is the Dread Pirate Roberts versus Inigo Montoya in The Princess Bride. My number 3 is Anakin Skywalker versus Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. My number 4 is The Bride versus the Crazy 88 in Kill Bill Volume 1. And my number 5 is Hector versus Achilles in Troy.
All right. And Jay, your top 5 were?
If I can remember them in order, I think I didn't write them down in order. I just have my notes all blurred all over. I think my first one was Lord of the Rings, Alerts. The second one was Hero in the chess court, Nameless versus Sky. The third one was Robin Hood, Errol Flynn, and then Mark of Zorro. And finally, the last one I had. Yojimbo, that's right.
Yeah. All right, and James's top 5 was Rob Roy versus Archie Cunningham, Liam Neeson versus Tim Roth, and Rob Roy. Then I picked The Duelists, the second duel from that film. Then I came to The Musketeer, the final duel, Tim Roth as Febvre versus Justin Chambers as D'Artagnan. And then jumped to Netflix's The King with Timothy Chalamet and as Prince Hal versus Tom Glencarney as Henry Hotspur Percy. And finally went to round it out with Monty Python and the Holy Grails, King Arthur versus the Black Knight.
Hells yeah.
All right. Quick honorable mentions. Oh, I do have to do our mother, the mom's mention. So I was giving her my list to see what she thought, because our mom actually listens to the show, and so she said that we should include. She asked if we were going to include Raiders of the Lost Ark, Harrison Ford versus the Arab Swordsman. So that's
shoots him.
Yeah. that's Terry Richards playing the Arab swordsman in that. So
it's the famous stunt guy, right? He's also the big German at the end, right?
Yeah, he's a really big guy. But yeah, that was Mom's mention. So Jay, what's one of yours that didn't make your top 5 but is still left?
I definitely had Seven Samurai as well.
Okay.
I just liked Yojimba's fight scene a little bit better, but Seven Samurai for sure. There's a fight scene where the guy says, you would have died if these were sharp. And then they end up, the guy can't handle it. They end up drawing their swords, and sure enough, he dies.
All right,
Ian,
Jay,
what
hit
about
me.
you?
Oh, me? All right.
Yeah, I'm hitting you.
I'm going to go with Connor McLeod versus the Kurgan in Highlander. This is so 80s. It's so awesome. Queen as the soundtrack. You got the sparks flying everywhere, which is actually caused by car batteries hooked to the swords. And as they hit each other, the sparks literally fly in this fight scene.
A new spin on electric fencing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do Die Another Day, a 007, Pierce Brosnan versus Toby Stevens. This one, it's so fun, and it reminds you of the time when James Bond was still a tongue-in-cheek sort of film, with like a twinge of serious, but like since Daniel Craig's had it, it's it's far much more like a seriously Bourne style film.
You mean
But
way
like,
better?
Sure, I prefer it that way, but like watching this fight scene, I'm like, they go from sport fencing to like all these other different weapons and everything, and they just kind of keep escalating it until the fight's broken up, and it's like it's not to the death, it's this cool scene. So that was my fun.
Awesome. All right, Jay, hit me with another one.
This one's kind of cheating because it's not from a movie, it's from an anime series. It's Berserk, Griffith versus Guts. There's just this beautiful scene where it's super brutal. Guts is super brutal. He ends up like grabbing Griffith's sword with his teeth, holding it in between his teeth. Griffith ends up getting him in an arm bar at the end and like actually pops out his shoulder because he won't yield. And then after that, he's like, you're mine. You belong to me now, right? Just like awesome fight scene, awesome story. It's probably my favorite anime.
Nice.
Some reason my dad rented this from a video store for me when I was like 12. And
that's just
he
wrong.
Walked in while I was watching it. He was like, maybe not. And I've been searching for the original everywhere, and HBO Max has like the remake of it, or their new good. Series. It's not. I've read. I was like, should I watch it? And they were like, everybody's like, no, don't watch the original. All right. Oh, I guess it's me.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go with Rey and Kylo Ren versus the Praetorian Guards in Star Wars Episode 8: The Last Jedi. Say what you want about the film. I have said since I watched the movie that Star Wars Episode 8: The Last Jedi has some of the worst Star Wars of all time and some of the best. And this is by far one of the greatest lightsaber duels in the series. It's just insane. The white and the reds scenery with the guards and all that. Yeah, it's definitely cool scene.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I'm down to 2 left on my list, and since you picked a Star Wars one, I'm not. I am actually going to go this one. Shout out to my son out there who's been watching all the Pirates of the Caribbean films. I'm going to go with Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl. Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow versus Jeffrey Rush as Captain Barbossa. So I particularly enjoyed this fight scene because while it's not like awesome in so many ways, it's clever because they're kind of basically dealing with the fact of being undead versus not undead, and it's got something special to it that kind of makes it a unique fight that a lot of other sword fighting scenes lack. So it's like, yeah, you stabbed me, but I'm really a skeleton. Look, it's like, so it's got that little fun tidbit in there. So
one of the greatest plot twists, right, is that Jack Sparrow is dead the whole time. It's like
the Sixth Sense. I thought it was because he took some, but yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that definitely a worthy scene. All right. Well, this has been our greatest sword fights movie draft, and Jay, thank you so much for joining us. It was a lot of fun. It was super epic in every sort of the word.
You want to
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was awesome.
go ahead and plug your YouTube channel, Jay?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is called Broadsword Academy Manitoba. Recently, I posted a lot of, I have a whole playlist for solo training for COVID-19 because we're all locked up. So if you guys are new to swordsmanship, you can basically grab a stick from your yard, use anything that you want to, and check out my YouTube channel. I'll run you through the basics of Highland broadsword swordsmanship. That's kind of like what you would expect out of Rob Roy in the fight scene. Broadsword, a basket hilted broadsword from the 1700s, but it also applies to a lighter spadroon or maybe a military saber. It was all used in the same way. So any sword you like, grab a stick if you feel like it, follow along, and I'll run you through it. It'll be a good introduction and something fun that you can do during COVID-19.
Yeah, and this is a
Awesome.
sword style that I do too, and it's Jay, you're pretty much one of the best out there. So I'm glad that you came on. So I need to go hit those videos up because I feel like I'm getting out of practice.
All right. Well, as always, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. We post these unedited videos on YouTube, and rate us on Apple Podcasts. Jamie, go ahead and sign us out.
Well, this has been the Cine-Siblings Podcast Movie Draft. I'm James.
I'm Ian, and that's Jay down there. All right. Peace out.
Bye.
Bye.